I want to talk to you about something that is driving me absolutely crazy. And one could argue that it's because I'm a little bit of a stickler about words, but I think that this is really important. And no one is talking about it. And when I say no one is talking about it, I mean I literally cannot find a single person anywhere who's talking about this. And it's the use of the word migrant. So apparently, we've got this invasion at the border, thousands of migrants a day crossing into the United States illegally. There was a time not so long ago when we made a distinction between migrants and immigrants. And I looked the other day, I did a little Google search and saw what came up on top, like top results to see what we're calling these people now and to check out the definitions and see if it is as I remembered. And as of right now, the definition of migrant has not been memory hold. A migrant is someone who moves around for work. So, for example, people who are in California and they're moving from farm to farm to do harvesting during certain seasons, they're migrants because they move for work. Maybe they come into California to work for one season and then they go back to Mexico or their home country for the rest of the year. And then they come back to California to work and then they go back home. They're migrants because they migrate for work. Their stay is temporary. That's what a migrant is. If you look it up, that distinction is still made, that immigrants come here to stay, migrants come here temporarily. There are zero migrants crossing into the United States right now. Zero. Because migrants are actually allowed to do this. They're allowed to come in and work and then go back home. We like that. We do that. We've been doing that for a very, very long time. What we've got at the border are immigrants, people who intend to come here to stay. And on top of that, not only will they stay, but they'll make money. And they'll make money under the table, and they'll send a lot of that money back to their families at home. Now, that is absolutely what they should try to do. I mean, I've always thought this since I was very young, that if I lived in an impoverished country and I had very limited opportunities, I would say that it's my responsibility to do anything possible I could to get to a place where I could provide a better life for my family. But I've also always felt that it is the absolute responsibility of the United States to keep them out. They can't just come willy-nilly. They're not migrants. They're immigrants. They want to immigrate here and stay here. Now, is this a big deal? Yeah, I actually think it's a big deal. You might say that it's just I'm being nitpicky. I don't think I'm being nitpicky. I'm floored by the fact that this word has been adopted by everyone on the left and on the right. And I am constantly wasting my time responding to people with platforms who post about the migrant invasion or this migrant detention center. And I always replied, they're not migrants, they're immigrants. And then there's always somebody who responds and says, no, they're illegal aliens. And actually, this is really the point. The point is that when language changes, there's a reason for the language change. There's a reason for the shift. I would say that the right has willingly or unwillingly, knowingly or unknowingly, adopted the language of the left. Why would you call illegal immigrants migrants? Because a migrant has been a legal thing. So when we call them migrants, it sounds softer. It's more accepted. It's more acceptable. We don't think that these are criminals, when really the truth is they are criminal aliens. They are illegal aliens. So not only do we not call them, we don't call them illegals anymore. We don't call them aliens anymore. Now we can't even call them immigrants because there's been such a shift in the language that they're all being called migrants by everyone on the left and on the right. It's very bizarre. Actually, I shouldn't say it's bizarre. It's pretty expected, but it's something that we ought to pay attention to. Why does this happen? I've been mulling it over quite a bit. Why does this happen? Why does language change like this around certain groups of people? So if you want to make people who are against these folks coming into the country illegally, if you want to make people like me, maybe like you, seem like a bad person, then you take a term and you make it a bad term. So a really obvious one is Negroes. That's not an acceptable word anymore. Then they were called blacks, and then they were called African Americans until a lot of blacks in the United States were like, yeah, I don't identify with being African American. My family's from the Caribbean or from South America. And maybe like 4 generations ago, like my great grandfather was from Africa. So don't call us African Americans. We're just black. So now they're black again, but with a capital B. Why does this happen? For a few reasons. One, it sets up a victim class that is also a privileged class. That's very important because I don't know if you've noticed, but sometimes the word white is capitalized. Sometimes the word brown is capitalized, more often than white, that's for sure. But see, blacks with a capital B. They are both victims and privileged. That's very important, especially when you consider that one term that you may or may not see, this depends on what social media you spend time on, but I can't tell you how often I see whites referred to as whites spelled Y-T. So not only is it not capitalized, it's not even spelled out. That's a way of completely separating and subordinating. When you take that along with, let's talk about Indians. Okay, we all learned when we were young that Columbus thought that he landed in India, but he really didn't, and he named the people Indians, and that word, that term, stuck for a really long time. And then someone decided that they ought to be called Native American Indians, okay, and then we ought to drop the word Indians because they're not Indians, they're Native Americans, and then that wasn't even good enough. Now they're indigenous peoples. Why is that? When Native Americans already seemed like enough to say that they were here first, they are native to the country, whereas we are not native to the country. Personally, I'm a 4th-generation American. My great grandparents came here from Denmark. So I'm not an indigenous person. I am not a Native American, although I think I'm a Native American. I was born here. But see, if you take even the word native just wasn't strong enough to create a victim class and a privileged class at the exact same time. So they're indigenous to this land, whereas everyone else is an interloper. Everyone else doesn't belong. So you've got indigenous peoples who belong here. You've got black people who are capital B black. Well, I'm lucky if someone doesn't call me a YT or something about mayonnaise or something. I guess I'm supposed to suck it up because, I don't know, there was so much racism against black people, and now I get to pay for that because it was my people that are sometimes not nice to other people. I mean, it's crazy. But then you've got people coming over the border who, they are here illegally. They are criminal aliens. That's what they are. They're not migrants. They're immigrants, illegal immigrants. And immigrant is an important word because it just indicates intention. An immigrant intends to stay, a migrant intends to go back. Now, whether they're illegal immigrants or legal immigrants, that's a separate distinction. They're criminal immigrants. They are criminal illegal immigrants. But, we're not allowed to say that anymore. I got to thinking about this even a little bit more. No one is illegal. No human being is illegal. Okay, that's the most disingenuous attack. And it is an attack, by the way. It is not, it is a defense of a privileged / victim class, but it's also an attack on you for dehumanizing someone. You're not dehumanizing them. I was thinking about if I were teaching a college class and there were a bunch of kids in there and some of them wanted to audit the class, I might say, all right, the registereds, come take a seat. The unregistereds, go stand in the back. I can just imagine in today's day and age, if it's saying, no human being is unregistered. I'm not an unregistered. I'm a student. I'm a pre-registered. I'm a pre-enrolled. Okay, fine. You're pre-enrolled. All right, let's do it like this. If you're verified, if your enrollment in the class is verified, come to the front. If you're an unverified, go to the back. I'm not unverified. No human being can be unverified. I'm not illegal. I'm not unverified. I'm a human being with value and worth. And this whole thing exists just to put them, whoever them is, whoever it is we're talking about at the time. By the way, including me, because I belong to a couple of protected classes now. Thank you very much. I'm a woman. I'm a womanx, WOMXN. I'm a woman and I'm over 40, so you can actually be ageist against me. I mean, I'm very excited about belonging to multiple protected classes now. That's intersectionality. I'm part of the club now. It's super exciting. But the whole point is to take whoever, right? Whatever that group is, and to make them both victims and privileged, but also to make anyone who calls them the wrong name to make them the attackers, the extremists, the racists, the bigots. So it's a way of dividing and creating hostility. And it has been an extremely effective strategy. It's something that I think that we ought to pay attention to in terms of what's happening at the border and the changing demographics, because the fact that the right has adopted the term, what it shows me most of all is how insidious the shift in language can be and what a dramatic effect it can have on discourse across the board. So we might look at any of the classes of people that I've talked about, and I don't mean classes like hierarchy. I just mean any of the groups of people. We might look at those things as being almost historical at this point. Fine, we've all adopted the term Indigenous peoples. We've all adopted the term Black with a capital B. Okay. But now what? Now with these people who are criminal aliens, who are illegals, now I think there's going to be a point where you can't even call them immigrants. But that's what they are. They do not intend to work here for a little while and then go home. They're not coming here on visas. By the way, they're not asylum seekers either. And most of us know that. If they were truly asylum seekers, they would have left whatever country they were fleeing from, gone to the nearest country, and then gone to an embassy. Or they would have come here, gone through a port of entry, and they would have filed paperwork. That's what they would have done. So asylum seeking is, it's just a trick. And again, if I were them, I would do the same thing. If I were seeking a better life for myself or for my family, I would bend whatever rules I could as well. I just think it's important that we be very aware of the fact that the discourse changes as language changes. In totalitarian, under totalitarian regimes where language is controlled, thought is also controlled. So I always say the wrong Korea. North Korea is a bad one, right? In North Korea, where they don't even have words for things like stress or love, that's intentional, because if you're feeling stressed out, but you don't have a term for it, you can't name it, then you can't even really allow yourself to feel it. Or if you can't name the emotion that you have for a family member or for a romantic partner, then it's difficult to process that here and here. So when you control language and you disallow that certain words be said, it actually keeps you from being precise in your feelings and precise in your meaning, which makes discourse and conversation incredibly difficult and more confusing, more prone to misunderstanding, but also more prone to attack. So this thing where we're all talking about the crisis of migrants at the border, I find it alarming. I find the crisis alarming. But on top of that, I find the adoption of that language of the left in calling them migrants, I find that to be additionally alarming and something that's current, that's contemporary, that we can all pay attention to. I think the ship has sailed. We can't stop it. They're migrants now. Okay. Everyone on the right says it. And when I say everyone says it, I mean everyone says it. I have yet to have anyone with a microphone or a platform or an audience of any kind acknowledge when I've made the correction. I've never, ever seen anyone acknowledge, yep, you're right, they're immigrants, not migrants. And there are people doing really, really good work on this topic. They're down at the border. They're reporting on it all the time. They're going undercover. They're doing whatever it is they need to do. But politicians and media, everyone is calling them migrants. So really, all I really want to say about this is that I just want you to be aware that this is happening. It's super important because, yes, language is dynamic. Yes, it's a reflection of the time, but some of it is quite intentional. And this is a good contemporary example of intentional shift of language that is meant to cause miscommunication and more attacks and more conflict and less ability for people on one side of the issue or the other to be unified in what it is they want to do and how to combat things. So just be aware of that. I think it needs to be said. I think it's something that we ought to talk about. I think it's something that we ought to push back on. And if we've lost the migrant fight, if they're now migrants, if we've lost that fight, that's fine, I guess, because I'm just one person, and I can't fight the whole fight by myself. And even if I could get 1,000 of you to fight it with me, too late. But watch for the next time this happens. Watch for the way language changes and ask yourself, why is that happening? And what are the possible pros and cons for each group of people on either side of an issue or on any side of a complex, complicated issue? And ask yourself, why is this happening and who benefits? The question is always, who benefits? I would say in this case, the people crossing over into the country illegally are benefiting, but also those who want them to are benefiting. And they've been very successful. I mean, it's very sneaky and it has long-term ramifications. When you modify language, when you control language, you actually control thoughts. And that's something that we ought to be fighting against all the time. During this time in our country's history where I would argue that free speech is quite literally under attack, these are the little things we have to pay attention to. It's like the broken window theory, right, of managing crime. If you prosecute people who do something small like break a window or hop a turnstile, then those people are less likely to break other laws, and it's easier to prosecute them for these bigger issues. So you grab things at the small level so you don't have to deal with them at the big level. Same thing with the shift in language. Pay attention to when language changes. By the way, as of right now, you can go on Google and you can search migrant versus immigrant, and you will see lots of pages come up, dictionary pages that will make that distinction. But mark my words, there will come a time very, very soon, and I would say within the year, I give it 12 months tops, where you search those terms, and it will be more difficult to find any sources, any authoritative sources at all that are willing to make that distinction. Remember when that V word, the magic potion in the syringe, remember when that used to have a certain meaning, and then one day you went and did a Google search and you found that that definition had been removed from everything, everywhere. And now the definition of a magic potion has completely changed. I have to be careful because this video is going to go on YouTube, and I'm on Facebook right now, and neither of these platforms want there to be conversation about that. But when the language shifts and definitions shift, then the whole conversation shifts. When they control the language, they control the conversation, and then they control the outcome. So just pay close attention. It's been happening a lot over the last few years, and I anticipate that it's going to happen a lot more. And this is one that we can track in real time now that you're aware of it. Watch and see. Once in a while, go ahead and do a Google search for migrant versus immigrant and see how long it takes for that definition to change. We're going to have to start using the Wayback Machine to pull up old archived pages to see when the time was that migrant had a different definition than immigrant. And is this a big deal? You might still be thinking it's not, and maybe it isn't, but it is indicative of something that is a big deal, and that is the control of language and therefore the control of our thoughts. All right, thanks for listening. I think this has to be said, and share it with someone. Just have a conversation with someone about it. I think it's a worthy topic to discuss, if only for a moment.